Hey everyone, welcome to Keep It Casual, a video tutorial series featuring clean and simple card making. I'm Andrea, owner of Paper Crafters Library and Andrea Walford Designs. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I created this happy spooky Halloween card featuring products from Paper Tray Ink. So now the stamp set that I'm using for this card is Paper Tray Ink's Mr. Bones stamp set and the coordinating die. It's an older stamp set, but I love it so much that I find myself reaching for it over and over again. Now I started by die cutting 3 spiders using the little spider die out of Paper Tray's Stamper Select White cardstock, and just to make it easier for the cardstock piece to pop out of the die, as you can see there, I layered some wax paper in between the die and the cardstock, and that just makes it easier for it to slide out rather than trying to pick it out with tweezers or a paper piercing tool. My next step was to take that little spider image from the stamp set and Paper Tray's Royal Velvet ink and then stamp the image onto each of those die cut pieces. Now here you see me using a Stamp-A-Majig and my imaging sheet there, and I'm simply using that even though I have the clear stamps, just because while I'm filming with my camera, filming down over top of my work surface, it's very hard for me to see where I'm placing the stamp without getting my head in view of the camera. So I find it a lot easier just to use my Stamp-A-Majig. So there you can see I'm stamping my image onto each of those die cut pieces. My next step was to take a 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 inch piece of Stamper Select cardstock and stamp my sentiment in the bottom right corner using Ranger's Jet Black Archival ink. Now here you can see I've die cut a spider web out of Paper Tray's Spiderweb Trio dies. It's the medium-sized one, and I used my Big Shot and die cut it out of Paper Tray's black cardstock. I then stuck it to a piece of scrap paper using just a tiny bit of Dotto in the center and patted my Versamark ink pad all over it. Here you see me sprinkling on some of my Judikins. I think it's called sticky stuff. It's like an embossing powder, and when you heat it with your heat tool, it dries with a tacky finish, allowing you to place glitter or flock or whatever you want on top, and the glitter and flock will be gripped by the embossing powder. So I'm funneling back the excess into my jar there, and then using my Ranger heat tool just to heat it until it's melted, and carefully picking it off my paper, trying not to touch it. Then laying it inside my coffee filter, now making sure there's no trace of that powder left in the coffee filter. And then here I have my Glitter Ritz microfine glitter in black, and you can see I'm sprinkling it quite generously all over the spider web, and then very carefully lifting it and tapping off the excess. And then I always like to try and funnel my glitter back into my bottle pretty much right after I use it, because that keeps me from having accidental glitter spills. So once that was all cleaned up, I then took my heat tool again and just gave it a quick shot of heat. So essentially what you're doing is you're remelting the powder so it really grips and embeds the glitter inside it. So there you can see what it looks like. It just has a very subtle sheen to it. Now here I have a piece of Royal Velvet pattern paper that comes from the Royal Velvet pattern pack, and I cut it to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then on my Stamper Select card, which is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, I trimmed a sliver off the side and the bottom so that when I stuck my pattern paper panel to the front, none of the white cardstock would be showing around the edges. To stick the paper down, I used some liquid glue, Tombow Mono Multi-Liquid Glue, just to make sure that it was really thoroughly stuck down, and it's less expensive than using a dry double-sided adhesive. So there you can see what it looks like, and you can't see any of the card showing on the front side, so it actually looks like that is your card front. So with all the elements of my card gathered, I was now ready to start putting things together. And I wanted my little spider to be hanging from the spider web using some twine. And you can see there I have a 3-inch piece of baker's twine from the twinery. And I stuck it to the back of my spider by sandwiching it in between 2 glue dots and then just kind of touching the glue dot with my thumb to get rid of a little bit of that tackiness. Now it's not stuck down there, it's just there for placement so that I could see how long I needed to trim my twine to. And I have the spider web placed where I wanted it on the card. So once I kind of had an idea where I wanted it to be, I then took a little dimensional foam square and placed it in the center of my spider web, and then just placed my spider web there in that top left corner. So it's only being held right now by that dimensional foam. I then stretched out my twine and trimmed it because I wanted to stick it to the back of the spider web and didn't want it to show from behind that. Now to stick it, I took a little mini glue dot and I just kind of carefully stuck that to the back of the spider web there, and then stuck my twine to that glue dot. And then just made sure that no parts of the glue dot were showing around the spider web. Now once I had that placed, I then put some dimensional foam squares on the back of my spider, removed the backing from those squares, and then stuck it down to my card to make it look like it was sitting on top of that happy, spooky Halloween greeting. So like it had dropped off the web onto the sentiment there. Now to finish sticking down the spider web, basically what I did was I took my glue dots and I just took the tip of my tweezers and rolled it up and stuck it under some of the points. Now I didn't bother sticking it down under all of them, just under enough to basically keep the spider web in place so that it wouldn't shift or fall off my card. So once my spider web was adhered, I was ready to stick down my spiders. And to do that, I used some little dimensional foam squares. You can see I have the one on the back there, and I'm just removing the backing and sticking down the spider. Now for the second one, you see there this little black speck on my card. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get it off. So I decided to use my spider to kind of mask it. So I stuck a little dimensional foam square beside it and then positioned my spider in such a way that the leg of the spider actually covered that little black speck. So to stick my cardstock panel to my card front, I was originally going to use my little foam squares, but decided that was way too much work. So I pulled out my Scotch foam mounting tape and then just cut some strips along the top and bottom left and right edges, and then positioned my panel on my card front, making sure that it was centered so that I had a nice even border all around. So once my cardstock panel was stuck down to the front of my card, my very last step was to pull out my Rhinestone Basics jewels from Stampin' Up, and I just added 3 little jewels at the bottom just to give my card a tiny little bit of bling. So that's how I created today's card. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you at the next Keep It Casual.